Well, welcome to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, and joining me today is Alex Kragie, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff at the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, which here in Connecticut we call Dept. And I understand, since I've just been here for 2 years, that it maybe used to be Dept, but now it's Dept, right?
So that's exactly right, Anna.
And what was the kind of meaning of adding energy to environmental protection?
The governor came in with the goal of trying to put together a policy-making body that had a direct hand informing the policy for the state of Connecticut around energy. Because, to be perfectly honest, previous to 2011, there was no real one-true energy policy-making body, which led to decisions happening all over the place. What this governor has done is to create an entity that helps streamline and put all the decision-making functions and analysis functions, importantly, in one place so that we can come to reasoned conclusions and make policy going forward based on absorbing all of different viewpoints and all different areas of state government. So, and the bigger picture here is that we're pursuing the governor's vision of cheaper, cleaner, and more reliable energy. So that's really why we were started as a department. We were just the Department of Environmental Protection previously, but now we have our second E.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's laudable. It's incredibly important because, cheaper, cleaner, and reliable energy, and also because you're connected to the environmental protection piece that's still in the title of your department, we've got to think about what it means for the long run as well.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I had a great graduate school advisor who, in response to almost everything I said to him, would say to me, what are the policy implications of that? And clearly that's what you're doing at Dept as well. Well, the reason we're talking this morning and why I'm so happy to have you as a guest on my show is that Tuesday, July 9th, from 10 to 2 p.m. in Chapman Hall, which is our library here at the Middletown campus of Middlesex, we're going to have an EV program. You're going to have an EV program. We're going to host it. So what does EV stand for?
So EVs are electric vehicles, Anna, and it's a relatively new technology, though some would argue it's fairly old, but the focus and the mainstreaming of the technology is relatively new. Electric vehicles are, just as they sound, vehicles run on electricity as a fuel source. There are many different varieties. There are pure electric vehicles, which only run on electricity. There are electric vehicles that have a gasoline backup engine. There are hybrid electric gas vehicles that rely on both fuel sources simultaneously. There's really a whole bunch of different electric vehicles in the market right now, but it's really just starting to make an impact. We, in the state of Connecticut, are a great state for electric vehicles specifically because of the demographic layout of how our cities aren't located all. There's not one major center, but we're spread out across the state, and it's not too big, so that there's a range, there's an ability to have less range anxiety, as it's called, than elsewhere in the country and other states.
Yeah, that's the concern that everybody has about the purely electric vehicle, right? That, you've only got 200 miles or so? Do you know what the highest one is?
Yeah, there are all kinds of experimental vehicles that can go very high in the hundreds, but right now the commercial vehicles are in the 100 to 200 mile range is about where you're maxing out, and some are even less than that. So you're exactly right. That is the main concern right now is everybody has a fear of running out of juice, if you will.
Exactly.
And it's a very legitimate concern. And so what we're trying to do in state government is to put together a program that's value added. We don't want to just be talking about electric vehicles. We don't want to just be hosting meetings and not really making any serious progress on electric vehicles. But we're seeking to put together a program that helps to move the needle for in-state current owners of electric vehicles and folks who might be interested in purchasing electric vehicles. And to that end, we have begun to work together with the Federal Department of Energy and other in-state resources to compile maps of where publicly accessible charging stations are located so folks can plan their trips and their daily commutes. We've also begun to put together a financial assistance program for the procurement of electric vehicle charging stations for public, private, and other entities across the state of Connecticut.
That it,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you go into a parking lot and you see the parking places that are closest to the door, right, which is the prize parking lot places, and you see a charger there and they're reserved for electric vehicles, that's a very powerful message.
It certainly is. You're exactly right about that, and that's starting to happen more and more across the state and across the country, really.
I'm sorry to say we have to take a break, but when we come back, let's talk about the program that will happen here next week, and then we can I'd like to talk to you about the American College and University President's Climate Commitment, because it's too long to go into now, but when we come back for our next segment, we'll talk about it some more. All right?
That's great.
Thank you.
Great.
Well, welcome back to Middlesex Moments Radio Show. I'm talking today with Alex Kragie, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff at the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection here in the state of Connecticut. And the reason we're together this morning on the radio program is because we want to talk about electric vehicle show. Is it a show? Is it a what?
That's a great way of calling
it.
Yeah, we're billing it as an expo, but you can really call it anything you darn well please. It's just an opportunity to have folks be able to get an in-person view of the latest electric vehicles as well as electric vehicle charging technology, and have all their questions answered by industry professionals who know a heck of a lot more about it than perhaps you or I do, and other folks who are very knowledgeable on the subject.
Tell me about the cars that will be here.
So we're going to have all kinds of cars here. It's very exciting. We're going to have everything from the pure electric vehicles, such as Nissan Leaf is a great example. There's Chevy Volt, which is a gas-electric hybrid. And there are also going to be other more upscale electric vehicles that'll be there. A Tesla model, which is a much ballyhooed, more upscale model that is a beautiful automobile, will be there for folks to check out. So it's an exciting mix. We'll have more than just those three, but that's a good representative sample.
And then what about the cost of these things? Can you give us an idea of what these vehicles cost?
Sure. That is one of the big barriers to the market right now, is that they are more expensive than traditional vehicles. There's no way around it. There is a federal tax credit that significantly reduces the cost so that you can look a Chevy Volt or a Nissan Leaf or more in the price range of an average mid-sized family sedan after the tax credit is factored in. And then there are the upscale versions of electric vehicles, which are some beautiful cars and a lot more expensive, but there's a lot of performance behind that. So you're starting to see the price points drop, which is an encouraging sign for everybody in the market for an electric vehicle, because speaking for myself, it's tough to think about owning something that's significantly more expensive than a car that is a conventional gas combustion engine. But when you put together the savings that you're going to get from the operations and maintenance, for example, the Federal Department of Energy just released a study a couple weeks ago that shows that the equivalent ownership rates for electric vehicles for fuel all in is something around getting gasoline, if you were to get gasoline for $1.70 a gallon. And I can't remember the last time $1.70 a gallon came out of my mouth. So that's a nice price point that everybody can feel good about.
Sure.
Forward.
And it's going to help 10 years out when these cars have a track record of being reliable and and continuing to be a savings. And then, don't you believe that the cost of gasoline is only going to go up? I mean, it's one of the few.
Well, it's hard to say exactly where the cost of gasoline is going to go. I think it is safe to say, though, that it is going to remain pretty expensive, all things considered. There are many different issues that go into, many different factors that go into it, and there is increased U.S. oil production. But at the same time, you are going to see oil prices that continue to be significantly above what you are likely to be able to be paid for through electric vehicles.
Right. Right. And then, of course, there's, the downside of any fossil fuel-powered car, which is the exhaust and the carbon.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah, leading to climate change. I'm sure you watched I've become weather obsessed in the last 20 years or so, and this morning, I think Las Vegas is going into its fourth day of temperatures over 115.
Ooh.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's horrendous. People sometimes will want to say, well, these are just the sort of natural changes in the environment that would have occurred without the impact of all the carbon we put into the atmosphere. But I'm one of the people who believe that we've had a hand in it. And so as a result, when I got to Middlesex Community College, I very quickly signed the President's Climate Commitment. At the college I'd worked at in Minnesota, I had done that previously and done the work on it. And I was in rural Minnesota where it was virtually impossible to get any anywhere without a car. Here in Connecticut, you're right. I mean, the state of Connecticut is the size of the county that I lived in Minnesota. And so the scale is remarkably different. But the issue remains for community colleges, which is that we're mostly commuter schools, which means people get to our schools using primarily a car. Although I'm happy to say here at Middlesex that we have several buses that come here as well, and the small but reliable group of people who ride their bikes here. What do you think about the impact long run in Connecticut? Or what are the policy questions, to go back to what are the policy implications of this? If we want to reduce carbon emissions, the President's climate commitment says to colleges across the country, we want you to get to zero carbon emissions. And as I threw myself into the data that you need to gather to report on where you are with your carbon emissions, the one place that is the hardest to attack is the commuter piece, the commuter miles. In the long term, are we going to get to a place where we do a whole bunch of things? Like, one is reduce the number of people who just drive cars in general. Yesterday's New York Times had a story called "The End of the Car Culture." Did you see that?
I didn't see it myself. No.
It's really worth reading, because the number of miles driven peaked in the U.S. in 2005. So something's happening. Well, the price of gasoline has gone up. That's one of the things. But there are all these other options. There are bike shares. There are mass transit options, which we have here in Connecticut, way more than we have in the Midwest, because you've got trains, and bus systems that will actually carry you from one major city to another. Then, of course, the impact of the internet. People are working from home and not needing to get around by car so much. In Connecticut, what are the kind of ideas that are floating out there for trying to reduce carbon emissions by getting people around in other ways? So we've got the electric cars, but are there other things?
Yeah, so a couple really interesting questions there, Anna. I think that you actually have a really interesting time. You brought up the President's climate commitment and the effect that the transportation culture that we have today has on that. And I think that we're approaching this from a certain point of view. I don't think that we're in the business of trying to tell people how exactly their transportation should function. So if folks are going to continue to use cars, there's a certain percentage of the population that's always going to be an option, the best option for. And then we certainly encourage all the different kinds of modes of transportation that folks can utilize, and that includes everything from biking to mass transit. But at the end of the day, cars are probably going to be a major part of the transportation solution for Connecticut and the country more broadly. So it's really a matter of how can we work to within the context that we have available to us. And I think that electric vehicles offer a really interesting path forward. If you come at it from an emissions perspective, the electric vehicle is a very nice element. There's a very nice dovetail with what we're trying to do with the clean energy industry more broadly in Connecticut and in the country. Like I said before, we're focused on cheaper, cleaner, and more reliable electricity. And in Connecticut right now, we have some of the cleanest electricity generation mix in the country, and that's only going to get cleaner and cleaner as we move forward, while we're still focused on driving down costs associated with that clean electricity. So we have a very nice situation here where currently right now our generation mix is sitting at roughly 45% natural gas, 47% nuclear power. So a nice way of thinking about it right now is that when you're driving an electric car in Connecticut, you have very, very low emissions because you're using a generation mix that is composed of natural gas and nuclear in a majority at the moment. But that mix is going to increase more and more, is going to tip more and more towards clean energy as we move further down the road with some of the programs that we've put in place here in Connecticut, and as the national marketplace shifts. So we have a really exciting opportunity to take advantage of this shift towards cleaner electricity and reduce our transportation emissions by shifting to electric vehicles.
Can you unpack the concept of clean energy for the listeners? What do we mean when we say clean energy?
When we say clean energy, we're talking about low emission or zero emissions energy. So you're talking about electricity that when it's generated, there aren't carbon emissions associated with it. You're talking about wind, we're talking about solar. In Connecticut, we classify fuel cells, which are natural gas input, as a renewable electricity source. As a clean electricity source. So you're really talking about an industry that is centered around electricity generation that is not built around carbon emission intensive technologies such as coal.
When I moved here from Minnesota, I moved from a world that was really, really into wind to one where I think solar is probably the predominant renewable energy in Connecticut. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're exactly right about that. Just the way the market shapes out, we are very big on providing a technology-neutral platform when it comes to clean energy programs. We don't want to be in the business of picking where the winners and losers are going to be, and we want to let the market do that instead. So the programs that we have put in place, we have the nation's first green bank, which is built around the concept of low-cost financing, driving the deployment of clean electricity, as well as a large-scale reverse auction for clean energy that helps to drive deployment of clean energy, but at the same time drive down the costs associated with that. So we're rewarding the companies that can sharpen their pencils the best, no matter the technology, and put clean electricity onto the grid that costs less to our ratepayers here in Connecticut. And we're making huge progress towards the day when we eventually will see grid parity or competition in the price between clean electricity and carbon-based electricity. So we're making really exciting strides. And just to give you an example, the clean electricity deployment for the entire state of Connecticut, in-state, in 2010 was roughly around 5 megawatts. This year, we're on track to deploy 55 megawatts of clean electricity onto the grid.
Wow.
So we're looking at a huge ramp up in terms of in-state clean electricity generation. It's very exciting.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We've come now to another break point. I'm sorry, we're breaking down here. The radio program goes by way too fast. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Well, welcome back to the Middlesex Moments radio show right here on WLIS, WMRD. This is Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, and today I'm really excited to be talking with Alex Kragie, who is the deputy chief of staff at Dept here in Connecticut, and we're talking about an event that will be happening here on campus on Tuesday, July 9th. It's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. here in Chapman Hall, although you're bringing cars, Alex, so the cars are going to be in the parking lot, I've got to believe.
They will.
Yeah, and this is free, right? So
it is.
And people,
that's exactly right. Totally free admission.
People don't have to RSVP, they can just come?
They can show up without RSVPing. We'd love it if folks can RSVP. You can send just a very brief note that says, I'm planning on coming to evconnecticut@ct.gov. So that's appreciated. But again, you don't have to. You can just show up if it's spur of the moment, if you don't have access to a computer for a bit.
That sounds great. This event opens up this much larger discussion about clean energy, and you were saying earlier, affordable. Tell me again the three things that you would qualify the energy as in order to be the kind of energy we want.
Cheaper, cleaner, and more reliable.
There we go. Yeah, more reliable. I gotta say, I've been in here in Connecticut for 2 years, and I thought I was leaving the world of crazy weather.
Did you know?
Oh my gosh! And so I went for a week without power. So reliable is, that's high on my list. I'll tell you that.
Oh, it's been a huge issue for all of us, and we have created just to go on a bit of a birdwalk here. We have created a microgrid program, which is centered around addressing reliability issues in delivering critical services to residents during severe outage situations. But maybe we should put that on the shelf for the moment. Maybe we can come back to it.
Well, and it's all of this is all related, of course, because we were talking about the reverse auction, which was what led to an increase by tenfold of megawatt production of clean energy here in Connecticut. So, you want to talk a little bit about how that worked and what that actually means as a practical matter. Now we have 55 megawatts of renewable energy being generated here in Connecticut. But what does that look like to you and me and people in our neighborhoods?
Well, that's a great question. And what it means is that we have these 55 megawatts coming online just this year. We expect that number to go up, expect more than 55 megawatts to come online next year. But what does that mean in the bigger picture? You can look at this through the lens of what the general assumption of the state of Connecticut. The entire state of Connecticut has a demand of roughly 5 gigawatts of electricity. So you're talking about 5,000 megawatts. And I'm using round numbers here. I'm sure some folks would give me a hard time over the exact numbers. But roughly speaking, for the two of us, the average person who's dealing with these issues, we consume at any time 5 gigawatts of electricity on the grid. So
is that in a year or in a day, or what does that mean?
That's just overall capacity needed to meet the needs of electricity in Connecticut. So, for example, the Millstone nuclear power plant provides about 47% of our electricity needs, meets about 47% of our needs, and that is coming in at just over 2 gigawatts. So you're looking at a large amount of electricity, and we're just starting to scratch the surface when it comes to clean electricity. But again, with the kind of progress that we've shown in just the past 2 years since Governor Malloy took office, I think that there is a real hope for moving towards this cleaner, cheaper, more reliable energy future that we're gunning for.
And so to go back to the practical question of what does this look like to me and my neighbors, is this solar panels on our roofs, or what is this?
It generally does. You're looking at everything from solar panels on the roofs of your neighbors to solar panels on the roof of the convenience store that you go to or the grocery store that you go to solar panels on the roof of large manufacturers, to a fuel cell installation for manufacturers. You're looking at a large set of different sizes of capacities of clean electricity. But mainly the way that the market has gone in Connecticut, it has come out as solar and fuel cells being the primarily deployed sources of clean energy. And again, we're not in the business of picking winners and losers, but this is what the market has decided is right for the state. You are looking at more and more installations going on to residential homes in Connecticut, thanks to the nation's first green bank, as I was describing earlier. You're looking at larger scale installations going onto the roof of a Walgreens or a Walmart or a Costco or any other local small business at a little bit larger size, or you're looking at a fuel cell going into a small business right around the corner from you. So this is really a distributed energy story here. You're seeing a lot of what we call behind the meter deployment of clean energy technologies as opposed to larger scale, grid scale, gigawatt of panels worth in a field,
sure.
Which, by the way, would take up a whole lot of space that we don't have here in Connecticut.
Yeah, right. Just the mention of the grid makes me want to kind of go back to this question. So what does this look like to my neighbors? So let's say my neighbors, or even I, would love to have a solar array on my roof and, collect most of the energy I need from the sun. But does everyone who does that, do they also have to have a backup so they are connected to the grid?
That's a great question. When you do install solar panels on your roof, you generally are also keep open an opportunity to connect to the traditional grid, so that in the event, during the evening when the sun isn't shining, you can draw power from traditional electricity grid. By the same token, power that you generate in excess of what you need, so say you're not using all of the electricity that's being generated at 6 p.m., you can sell that back onto the grid through a policy called net metering, so that you can actually reduce your electricity bill to zero or even make some money off of your solar panels on your roof.
And does the state of Connecticut have some programs to help people finance these kinds of installations on their homes? Basically, you were retrofitting. I mean, you think about the amount of energy work and just energy conservation work that needs to be done. Most of it is really retrofitting existing buildings. So
that's exactly right.
So for all of us who have homes that are built and they already exist out there, are there programs that Dept or the state of Connecticut has that will help people finance those things?
You bet. We have some really exciting programs that are run through our Green Bank, and you can find out more about those by going to www.ctcleanenergy.com. And there you can learn about we have a residential solar installation program, which is a very straightforward, easy way of getting panels on your roof and working with private sector company to do so. There are other programs that this Green Bank runs. For example, there's a C-PACE program, or commercial property assessed clean energy program for commercial institutions to take advantage of. There are all kinds of different programs that this Green Bank offers. Folks can take advantage of on the household level or the business level.
I hope that everybody listening will give some extra thought to the possibilities there. There's a great documentary, I'm sure you've seen it, What Happened to the Electric Car? Do you remember that? If you haven't seen it, I'd really recommend it. It's about the EV1, the very first, the Chevy car that was created. I came of age and started my career during the Iran oil embargo in 1973-74, where everybody was convinced really very quickly that we had to get off petroleum-based fossil fuel economy, and here we are, 40 years later, still working on it. But maybe now, maybe we just have to be patient. Maybe that's the other side of policy studies, right? That you can create policies, but you got to bring human beings along, and that takes a little bit of time. I was just going to say, I really just appreciate the work that you're doing. And that I really love the idea of fusing energy and environmental protection, because that's so important as well, because we got to make sure that we've got a world that will sustain our children and grandchildren and forever and ever and ever. So many signs are now just becoming very, very apparent to us that we have some critical issues we have to address yesterday and today and tomorrow. Is there any advice that you would give to people who are concerned about the cars that they drive and the thoughts that they might have about electrical vehicles? Any encouragement that you might have?
Well, I think that there's even a different way of looking at it. I don't think this is a market for people who are necessarily concerned about their current mode of transportation. Folks are, this is certainly something to think about. But this is actually an upgrade in terms of performance, in terms of the way the car drives, and the operations and maintenance costs that go into the owning and operating a vehicle on a daily basis. This is an opportunity to get away from a lot of those traditional shackles, such as $4 or $5 a gallon gas. So it's a great opportunity to cut costs after that initial upfront investment. And I am happy to say, as we discussed earlier, that initial upfront investment is coming down. The price point is dropping as this industry matures. So it's a very exciting opportunity for those who are concerned about their mode of transportation, and for those who aren't, who are just looking for a better deal or a better ride.
Well, I'm really excited that you're going to be here on the Middlesex campus, and I'm going to block out time and be sure that I get a chance to take a look at all these cars. Are you going to have electric bikes as well, or is it all four-wheel vehicles?
I think we're four-wheel in this particular expo, but there is some interesting things with electric bikes. You're exactly right. There will be folks on site who can certainly get folks information about electric bikes if they'd like it.
Well, let me. When you decide you want to do an expo on those bikes, let me invite you back. And in fact, let me just give you sort of a carte blanche. Anytime you want to do anything related to energy and environmental protection, please think about doing it here at Middlesex.
Oh, thank you, Anna. We appreciate that. And if you're not careful, we might take you up on that.
I can only hope. Well, I'm going to have to say goodbye, Alex. But before I do, I want to just remind people once again, it's Tuesday, July 9th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., Chapman Hall. And then the parking lot, we have lots and lots of parking here. And part of that parking lot is going to be filled with these remarkable electric vehicles. So come out and take a look. This has been the Middlesex Moments radio show. I've been speaking with Alex Kragie, who's just been a wonderful guest today. He's the Deputy Chief of Staff, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection here in the beautiful state of Connecticut. Take a look at that ctcleanenergy.com website. Think about your daily lives and how you can have a lighter footprint here on this earth while also taking advantage of this remarkable new technology that is going to be developing in the field of electric vehicles. I'm Anna Wasesha, President of Middlesex Community College, wishing you a very good day.